of Legacy. He's playing Rug Delver. So he's going to be pressed to keep permanents on the table. Rug Delver is a deck which usually plays very few lands, very few creatures. And they all are going to have their bullseye on them for this match.
Yeah, I mean, normally Nimble Mongoose is a very tough creature to kill, but because Reid has access to 4 Lilianas, 4 Smallpox, and 4 Innocent Blood, it's not a big deal.
All right.
So Reid won the die roll. He leads off with the Swamp. And let's see if Andy has a turn 1 play. We see Volcanic Island into Ponder. Okay, so we'll see if Andy wants to keep this. Basically, the way to kind of combat Pox is to have all your counter spells actually do something. Have your Daze do something. Have your Spell Pierce do something. Also, make sure you kind of protect your creatures and you have to protect your lands. You don't want to get to a spot where you just don't have any lands and you can't cast anything.
So because of that, would a Rug Delver player want to keep more lands than they typically would?
Oh, they would. And they would definitely bring in Life from the Loam. Life from the Loam is one of the best cards you could have against Pox. So after sideboard, you'll be sure Andy will do his Brainstorms, his Ponder, do whatever he could to try to find that Life from the Loam.
Now, because these players know each other, is it safe to assume that Andy knows which deck Reid's on?
Oh, yeah. We all stayed together in the same hotel room. We drove up last night together. So it's, yeah, pretty obvious they know what each other are playing.
All right, so Reid's going to cast a Hymn to Turok here. Andy has, I do not believe he has the option to daze it, so it's going to be 2 cards here. He's debating whether or not he wants to Force of Will.
Yeah, he should most certainly Force of Will this. The 1 life is pretty irrelevant against Pox, and this allows Andy to kind of pick and choose what 2 cards he wants to discard. He actually did have Daze in his hand. I'm surprised he did not daze it.
Yeah, he discarded Force of Will and Stifle here.
That's very surprising. Andy is actually new to Legacy, so maybe that has something to do with it. But he could have actually dazed that Hymn to Turok. So I'll definitely ask him later about it.
Well, so he's going to go ahead and Ponder here. We see a Delver of Secrets among the top 3. He does have a 2nd land drop and a Nimble Mongoose to make, but it looks like those are the only lands he has right now.
Yeah, and you can see Andy, he immediately exiled the Stifle with the Force of Will. Stifle's not that great against Pox, so I wouldn't be surprised if Andy boarded a couple of them out.
Yeah, does Pox even play fetch lands?
Yeah, they don't play fetch lands, they play Wastelands.
Okay.
Yeah, Wastelands, and they also play Liliana, so you can stifle the Liliana sack effect.
All right, so we are going to see that Nimble Mongoose. Right now, there are 3 cards in Andrew's graveyard. He's going to go ahead and pass the turn back to Reid.
Yeah, some Pox deck play black-green Pox, so those do play 4 Verdant Catacombs, and they play Bayou. But for Reid is just straight mono-black.
So in the black-green versions, the green is for what?
They play Abrupt Decay, they play Pernicious Deed. Sometimes they have main deck Life from the Loam, so it's a bit different there.
So that Daze that didn't hit Hymn to Turok is going to go ahead and hit Liliana of the Veils. Reid tries for that on turn 3.
And it looks like Andy's pretty close to threshold here. I believe he has 4 in the yard with another sack land, maybe a Ponder or whatnot. He'll get even closer to that.
Yeah, he's going to go ahead, hit soon with an Nimble Mongoose. That puts Reid down to 19, and then he plays out the rest of his hand, which is another Mongoose and a Delver of Secrets.
Yeah, this is great. If you're able to land more than 1 threat against the Pox deck, it's very difficult for them to come back and deal with it. The reason being they don't have a card like Damnation in their main deck where they can just sweep the board. And as we know, Reid is playing mono black Pox, so he doesn't have access to, say, something like a Pernicious Deed.
Yeah, now there is a spicy 1 of in the main deck. Let's see. Reid's going to start with Dark Ritual, and then there comes the one I was thinking of. It's Knight of Souls Betrayal.
That is the 1 card that Reid had in his main deck, and he actually had it here. The only card that could actually sweep all these creatures away. And knowing Andy, he's probably smiling and laughing about how lucky Reid got here.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you if Reid even had a sweeper in his deck. I glanced over his deck list and saw 1 Knight of Souls Betrayal and say, well, if he had the 1 Knight of Souls Betrayal in his hand, it would be pretty good now.
And the thing is, Knight of Souls Betrayal is normally not a sweeper.
Well, normally it doesn't even kill
anything.
Mongoose or Delver. He's
yeah.
going to get all 3 here.
Exactly. So this is really bad for Andy right now.
Yeah.
He's down just to a Volcanic Island, and he has a Lightning Bolt to him, but when Reid's at 19 life, that's not going to really do anything.
Reid followed that up with a Wasteland on the tropical island, and Andrew is now down to just 1 land. We see him an Urborg from Reid, and then another Hymn to Turok. Andy has 3 cards left in his hand. This is going to take care of 2.
Sure, yeah. I mean, knowing Reid, he'll probably get whatever he wants to get, but Andy will probably be left with like a Lightning Bolt or something. All right, so at this point of the game, it's very, very difficult for Andy to come back. I don't want to say it's impossible, but that's how Pox really plays out. You know, it takes a long time to win the game, but once you get to a point like this, Andy is kind of helpless.
Well, Reid just seems to be 2 for 1-ing and 3 for 1-ing
all
for
over
sure. The place.
Yeah, and essentially the game will go on, and Reid will eventually draw a Curse Scroll, or he'll draw a Nether Spirit, and that's how he'll win.
Okay, does he have a card advantage engine other than these? I mean, he has these 2 for 1s. We see another Hymn to Turok, but what does he do to draw extra cards?
Well, he has one copy of Bottled Cloister, and he also has Liliana's for card advantage.
Okay, so Bottled Cloister is an interesting card. This is a rare from original Ravnica.
Yep.
It's basically a Phyrexian Arena, and then it draws you an extra card every turn. But what it does is that it exiles your hand during your opponent's turn.
Sure. And it also protects against discard spells like Thoughtseize or Hemtotorok. All right, so Andy with a Flooded Strands, he'll go get a Tropical Island. Now, this is where if he had sideboarded Life from the Loam, say if this was game 2, he'd be able to, at least
recover.
Yeah.
Maybe not fully, but
not fully, but
have something.
Yeah, in
to work
theory
with.
he could. Okay,
Yeah.
so there's a Tarmogoyf, but there's a good chance Reid is just sitting on a Innocent Blood or a Smallpox.
Yep. So exactly that happens. There's an Innocent Blood from Reid. He passes back the turn. Now Reid only with one card in his hand. So while he seemingly has control of the board here, he doesn't really have a win yet.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. That's the whole thing. So
Right.
this game
there's
will
very little Andy can play that matters.
Yeah, exactly. This game will probably go about another 8 or 9, 10 minutes, but eventually Reid will most likely win this game unless Andy can somehow pull off a miracle here. Reid actually bought a couple of unlimited sinkholes yesterday. He was so excited. They had a heavily played section in the Star City Showcase, so he's like, you know what, I'm going to buy these unlimited sinkholes. So if we see some unlimited sinkholes, don't
That's
be
where
surprised.
they came from.
Well, Reid does like his sinkholes.
Yeah, so that 1-for-1 resource denial continues on Reid's side. He wastelanded a tropical island. You see Andy now, he has 2 tropical islands in the bin. He has to be very careful with that Flooded Strand because the deck only runs 3 tropical islands.
Exactly. All right, so Reid shows the Urborg and the Dark Ritual. Those are the 2 cards from the probe. I think Reid actually didn't even play with the unlimited sinkholes. He already had them. I think he bought extra for his brother. So, really nice gesture.
All right, so we see that 3rd tropical island is now in Andy's hand.
Okay, so yeah, this is where Reid wants to get in the point of the game. So Reid knows that he's probably about a 96 to 99% chance of winning this game.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is if Reid manages to hit that last sinkhole with something like that last tropical island with something like a Hymn to Turok, Andy will have no green mana for the rest of the game.
Sure, and there's a Liliana of the Veil. So at this point, it's like,
That's a win con.
Yeah, what can Andy really do?
Well, he's going to have to, I imagine, throw some lightning bolts at that Liliana.
Yeah, and I mean, eventually Reid's just going to draw, again, Nether Spirit, Curse Scroller. He could even draw Mistress Factory. At this point, he could just kind of win with Mistress Factories. Sure,
Right.
Andy might have like a bolt or two, but eventually Reid will draw all his Mistress Factories and win that way as well.
Yeah, so Liliana's at 4. It looks like there are going to be some lightning bolts cast at the Liliana. We see the first one takes her down to 1.
Yep.
And it looks like another one is going to finish her off.
Yeah, I
Or
believe
it's a
the
forked
Forked Bolt.
So he can't go 1-1 to Reid and the Liliana. It doesn't
No.
actually work that way because remember when you target a Planeswalker, you're actually targeting the player.
Exactly. But if Reid, for example, had a creature in play, he could have went 1 to the creature, 1 to Reid,
Yes.
and then the 1 from Reid he could redirect.
All right, so Andy now just with lands in this Brainstorm is going to go ahead and Brainstorm. This is one of the situations where Brainstorm is almost a draw 3. The question is if any of the 3 matter.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole thing. And well, the one thing that Andy has going for him is that the Pox deck does take a while to win. So if this game goes long, Andy could eventually, sneak in 2 quick games where Reid might have trouble closing out all 3 games if it does go to 3 games.
Sure, we do see a pair of Tarmogoyfs in Andy's hand. He put that last tropical island back in his deck and then fetched for it. So
Exactly.
remember, that's his last green source of the game. If Reid can get it, this is going to be just going to turn off a lot of Andy's deck.
Yeah, and I do know Reid has another Innocent Blood in his hand. So even if Andy plays his first Goyf here, that's going to die to Innocent Blood, and he's going to have to dodge a couple of more Lilianas, a couple of more Innocent Bloods, and of course, Smallpox.
Right, so we see this Tarmogoyf here.
And,
pass back.
and even Nether Spirit could just block all day if Reid chooses to, if he ends up drawing one.
Yeah, there's the Innocent Blood you talked about. So Tarmogoyf in the yard, and he's going to
Sinkhole.
sinkhole the green. Now Andy is off green for the game.
Exactly. So,
Yeah, Andy's just checking. There's 1 trop, 2, and 3. All 3 are in the
so
graveyard.
yep, I think that's game because Andy is now locked out of the game. He can never play Delver of Seekers because that would immediately die due to Knights of Souls Betrayal.
And he can't play any of the green cards.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have enough lightning bolts to win by damage.
Exactly. So Andy knows this is a bad matchup, and I'm still curious about when Andy chose not to daze the Hemp to Torok, and instead he chose to force a will that Hemp to Torok. Kind of interesting. So taking a look at Andy's sideboard, he has Ancient Grudge, which might actually come in because he needs to have an answer to that Cursed Scroll.
Right. You'd also Bottled Cloister is a card that if you manage to blow it up, you get your opponent's entire hand with it.
Yeah, most likely though, Reid won't have many cards in his hand due to the fact that he has Dark Ritual. All his cards are really, I'm going to come get you. I'm going to get you with the Sinkhole. I'm going to get you with the Hemp-Torok. I'm going to go Dark Ritual Liliana. But yeah, that is true. So we would expect him to bring in the Ancient Grudge. We would expect to bring him the Life from the Loam is definitely one of his best cards he could bring in here. Vidalian Click, I wouldn't be surprised if Andy brought in Vidalian Click just because it's a flash type creature and it almost plays around Innocent Blood, right?
Yeah, it seems like all of Reid's removal are sorceries to
Yep,
begin with.
exactly.
So the Vidalian Click's at least worth 3 damage. It also gets to take a card out of Reid's hand, which seems pretty potent in this matchup. Extra lands for Reid don't seem like they go very far.
Okay.
So removing a spell, I think, could be pretty decent.
Yeah, and Liliana of the Veil is a problematic card, so Vidalian Click really fights against that. End of turn, Vidalian Click, all right, attack Liliana, try to finish her off or whatnot.
Right.
All right, what about Reid? Do you see Reid bringing in any other cards? I see
Oh,
another.
man. So he has a second Knight of Souls Betrayal.
Okay.
And I do think he'd want to bring that in here. That card, as we saw, was very good against Andy.
Yeah. Now, Reid has an interesting card in the form of Nether Void in his sideboard. Some
So-
Pox decks actually play Nether Void main deck.
Yeah, so Nether Void basically doubles the mana cost of spells, right?
Essentially, it's a mana leak for all players.
For all players.
Yeah, so it's an enchantment world. I
so
think they
every spell gets mana leaked.
Yeah, it's 3 colors and a black. Every spell, there you go. Yeah, enchant world. All spells are 3 additional. They have to pay. So all these Nimble Mongoose and the Delvers are actually 4 mana now. That's
Against
pretty.
Rug, this almost means they can't play things.
Exactly.
I imagine that with all the sinkholes and wastelands Reid has, remember Andrew only actually has 6 lands in his
Yep.
deck, so if Reid gets off to say 2 sinkholes and a wasteland and sticks a Nether Void, Andy just won't be able to cast a spell from there on.
Yeah, he'll be locked out of the game. So if you guys haven't seen Pox yet, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, this deck looks pretty cool. If you guys are interested in it, I'm sure Reid wrote an article about Pox. You guys can search that up on Star City Games. But also just stay with us here, watch the match. Pox is just a really cool deck, and especially with people going crazy about True Name Nemesis. Oh, my True Name Nemesis, check me out. I went to Target and bought it for $30. I got a good deal on it. I'm going to go play it, blah, blah, blah. True Name Nemesis doesn't do anything against Pox. It's
No.
Innocent Blood, Smallpox, Liliana, Knight of Souls Betrayal. So if there is a time to play Pox, I would say this is the time, and it's probably going to stay the time at least until the Star City Invitational come Las Vegas in 3 weeks, just because a lot of people are going crazy over True Name Nemesis.
All right, so I'm going to throw out a couple other cards
Sure.
in the sideboard and ask whether or not you think they come in. First one's going to be Nile Spellbomb.
Okay, the Spell Bomb is always good against Rug Delver because they rely on their graveyard, and Reid knows that he's going to rely on his graveyard even more because of Life from the Loam. So it's going to stop Nimble Mongoose. It's going to stop a Life from the Loam. So both those cards are very important, and it could also shrink a Tarmogoyf.
All right.
So he's definitely going to bring in the Nihilist
yeah.
Spell Bomb.
Nile Spellbomb definitely. And now here's one that most players may not know. This is from
Okay.
Weatherlight. It's Spinning Darkness.
Yeah, Spinning Darkness is normally very good against a very, very aggressive deck, say Goblins, where you really want to be able to kill the Goblin Lackey in turn 1, and you need an extra removal spell other than Innocent Blood.
So can you have 3 black cards in your graveyard on turn 1?
Well, it depends. Reid does have cards like Dark Ritual. He could go Liliana. Yeah, I guess it's just too bad on turn 1. Maybe but it's good against the weenie decks.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Does Rug Delver count as a weenie deck?
Not really, because it's never going to kill a Goyf, right?
Yeah, it's unlikely to kill a Goyf.
It's only going to kill Delver. It's not going to kill.
It does have an interaction where he's exiling his own
Oh,
graveyard.
yeah, to shrink the Goyf?
To shrink the Goyf. So there's a chance it kills the Goyf.
Yeah, but
But not a good one.
Spinning Darkness is mostly against those. Spinning Darkness is also good, say against the Death and Taxes deck, where
Sure.
the Mother of Runes is off the board. You get a Thalian, a Stoneforge Mystic, or you get some creatures like that.
Yeah. Actually, speaking of Death and Taxes, I feel like that deck certainly has had a resurgence in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
Pox seems like it's excellent against that style of deck.
Yeah, it is.
It's-
Yeah.
I mean, it's a deck that doesn't care about Mother of Runes for the most part.
Exactly. So Reid has a pretty good matchup after board against combo, and even game 1. So he's definitely really well suited against both creature decks and combo decks. All right, so we'll take a look here. Andy will be on the play. I do see 2 lands and 2 Delvers. So
2
he's.
lands, 2 Delvers, and a Ponder. I cannot imagine he's shipping it.
I believe Andy kept in Stifle. That looks like.
It does look like he's kept in Stifle.
Again, Stifle is not very good against the Pox deck, so I'm kind of surprised that he kept in Stifle.
All right,
I was talking to Reid about this, and Reid's like, yeah, you could get a Liliana, you could get a Wasteland, but other than that, it's just, is not really where you want to be, I don't think.
So Andy plays turn 1 Delver, presumably setting up for turn 2 Delver and Ponder.
Sure.
This is something I've talked to a lot of Rug Delver players. When you have a hand of 2 Delvers and a Ponder, is it best to go Delver, Delver, Ponder, or Ponder, double Delver?
I think you always want to get Delver out there immediately. That's just my own opinion, but
Sure.
either way is probably fine.
All right, turn 1 Reid is going to Dark Ritual.
And could this be
Start with him to Turok.
It's going to be a Hemtotork Innocent Blood, I think.
Yeah, he has also looks like a Nile Spellbomb, so any of the above work. I think you're right. Innocent Blood seems like the
for
best one
sure.
to play. If it's his only way to kill Delver, he may want to wait a turn so that he can play around Daze.
No, but I mean, if Andy had Daze, he definitely would Daze that Dark Ritual.
That's a good point. Okay.
Yeah,
So we already know that we're...
Yeah, like Reid already knows he doesn't have Daze. All right, so it looks like a reroll. And the reason why they're rolling is because sometimes players could, kind of see which cards have been in their hand or whatnot. Even
Some
though
players shuffle lands to the front of their hand.
Exactly.
Rolling a die makes it very random.
Okay, so I believe they had Stifle and a Delver, and Reid does have 1 black mana in his pool. So are we thinking it's going to be Innocent Blood?
Getting 2 Delvers off the table is pretty high priority for Reid. Andy will not have a creature if Reid makes that play.
Yeah, and Reid's definitely thinking about it. Pox is a tricky deck to play because you never really want to get the game too far out of reach. So there is the Innocent Blood.
It's because of that lack of a true sweeper.
Yeah, exactly. Like we said, the only sweeper, quote unquote, was that Knight of Souls Betrayal, and Reid actually had a game 1 for the win.
So Andy's hand is now down to, looks like Ponder and I believe Spell Pierce.
Yeah, he has land, he has Spell Pierce, and one other card it looks like.
Probe.
Okay, so I see a Wasteland, I see a Trop Island. Not sure. I also see a Goyf. Goyf is usually pretty good against Pox, just because at least it's big.
He wants the Goyf, but he's actually, I don't know if his land is a fetch or a regular land.
It's a Flood of Strands.
Okay, so he can take one of these and not have to take all. Yeah,
so it looks like Spell Pierce, Probe, and Goyf is Andy's hand. That was just such a powerful turn for Reid. It just really destroyed Andy's game plan of going Delver, Ponder, Delver, flip, swing in, tempo you out. All of a sudden, Reid's like, all right, I mean, you have nothing, I have nothing, but if we both have nothing, I'm going to win that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the reasons that Dark Ritual is just such a powerful card. It lets you do things like that are really pretty unfair.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, Reid even could have went turn 1 Liliana if he had it, for example.
Yeah. So we see just the Tropical Island played. That was put to the top with Ponder. The next turn, Andy will be drawing the Tarmogoyf. He's leaving it on top so it's protected from discard.
Exactly. But it is unfortunate for Andy because it looks like Reid has another Innocent Blood in his hand. And also Reid has a Wasteland here. So I think Reid might actually just go for the Wasteland here on the Tropical Island just because Andy already discarded 1 Stifle from the Hemtotorok, but we'll find out in a second.
All right, he starts with Nile Spellbomb. He does play the Wasteland, but will he be using it?
Yeah, obviously Reid knows Stifle isn't the best against him, so there is a chance Andy boarded it out. But there's a Spell Pierce on the Spellbomb, so now Reid is almost certainly going to Wasteland that Tropical Island.
And there he goes for it.
Yep.
You have to think that was already part of his plan. If it wasn't part of his plan, he would have tapped the Wasteland to cast Nile Spellbomb.
Oh, sure, yeah. I'm just wondering why Andy chose to, stop that Spellbomb.
Well, if his plan is to go all in on this Tarmogoyf, he probably wants it to be big.
Well, I mean, if you look at Reid's graveyard, Reid has Artifact now, and he would have had Artifact anyway. He has land, he has Instant Sorcery, so still would have been a 4/5. So I think maybe Andy just thought, hey, I have Spell Pierce, let's stop this Spellbomb, let's not have Reid draw an extra card. And now both these players really know each other very well. They went to the same high school. They've been friends since, the elementary school days.
Oh, wow. Play from Andy. He does have Life from the Loam in his hand.
That's awesome.
As you said, that is a huge card in this matchup.
It really is. I guess that's the reason why. I didn't see it in his hand before. Maybe that was the card that we didn't see. We thought it was a Goyf because we saw it was probably a Loam. Yeah, so great play by Andy Boswell.
All right, so for the turn, so he does have a Goyf now, but the Loam was hiding in his hand as well.
Yeah.
That's a great reason to get to Pierce Nile Spellbomb.
Yep, exactly. So here it looks like Andy is going to play the Goyf. It's most likely going to die to an Innocent Blood or maybe even a Smallpox.
Sure.
Reid draws, I believe, another Urborg. Now, Reid does play 4 copies of Urborg to help that his Mistress Factories and Wasteland can produce black mana to cast Liliana, to cast Smallpox, or to cast Sinkhole, or even Hemtotorok.
Yeah, so Reid Innocent Blood's away the Tarmogoyf, then he's going to swing in with Mistress Factory for 2. That puts Andy down to 17. Both players still pretty close to their beginning life totals, though, 17 to 20.
Sure. And is this is a second Goyf. All right.
Very nice. All right.
Yeah, really good. All right, so let's see if Reid could have another removal spell here.
Now Andy's hanging on to a land in his hand as opposed to just playing it.
Okay.
That's presumably to what? Can you explain what the advantage to that would be?
I'm not sure what Andy's hand is. So if I had a better look, I could see what maybe his like line of play might be here. But there is a smallpox from Reid, so that means that Andy's going to lose a life. He's going to discard a card. He's going to sacrifice a creature, and he's going to sacrifice a land. Smallpox is such a good card.
Well, it lets Andy discard a land to the smallpox, which actually is of little consequence right now because he does have that life from the loam.
Exactly.
So Reid will hit in for 2 more with the Mishra's Factory. That will put Andy down to 14. Remember, both players lost 1 life off that smallpox.
Yeah, I think Andy's probably going to sacrifice his Flutterstrand, and then he's actually going to dredge back his life from the loam this turn.
He's getting that because it's a 3rd land in the graveyard.
Yeah, and by him dredging it, it gets closer for him finding a wasteland. So you could actually just wasteland that Mishra's Factory just to protect his life total a bit.
Yep.
So Life from the Loam is, like we said before, a very good card against Pox, and it's a card that Reid doesn't want to see. Because it kind of takes away half of Reid's game plan. Half of his game plan is to control the board, control creatures. The other half is to control your opponent's mana.
Yeah, so can Reid, does he board in things like Surgical Extraction just to deal with this? Or that seems pretty extreme.
Well, you could board in Surgical Extraction against Rug Delver, even if you're not a Pox player, just so you could get their Tropical Island and prevent them from casting any other green spells for the rest of the game. So Reid might have boarded in a Surgical Extraction or 2.
Yeah, now that dredge hit 2 more lands. Now with 5 lands in his graveyard, Andrew gets a choice here.
Yeah.
He's going to go ahead and grab a fetch land, a dual land,
and a wasteland. Yeah. So, and I wouldn't be surprised if he just immediately plays a wasteland and takes out that Mishra's Factory. And he does just that. What's that last card? Oh, the True Name Nemesis.
Yeah, he still has a True Name Nemesis. He plays 13 creatures in the main. He has the 12 usual suspects and then 1 True Name Nemesis.
Yeah. Okay. Now all of a sudden, Reid's pretty much out of cards. He has a couple of swamps, but he's really looking for something to close this game out.
Yeah. It seems like the black deck has a lot of 2-for-1s, but not too much card advantage. He's not really able to keep pace with Life from the Loam's card advantage.
Okay, so Andy is just going for it. He's going to play that True Name Nemesis. He's going to say, you know what, Reid's only going to have a couple of draw steps for him to find an answer, and if he does, then sure, but if not, Andy has a Brainstorm. He can set up Brainstorm, maybe find a second creature to play around a sacrifice effect. So Reid just passes the turn, so the True Name Nemesis is going to be around for at least another turn.
Yeah, so True Name Nemesis, usually pretty difficult to answer. It has protection from the opponent, but I would say not so much for the Pox deck.
Sure.
It gets sacrificed just like everything else.
Exactly. All right, so Andy decides to draw his 3 cards with the Brainstorm. I believe we see a Force of Will, another Brainstorm, a couple of lands, and 1 other spell back there that he's going to put up top. So I'm really liking Andy's position here. He really fought through the early power of Reid when Reid was able to go turn 1 Dark Ritual, Hematotoric, Innocent Blood. And, he's holding his own weight here.
All right, so Reid's going to cast Inquisition of Kozilek. Right now, it can hit a Brainstorm in Andy's hand. We may see him cast that in response.
Yeah, I'm almost certain that Andy is going to Brainstorm in response. It seems like the correct play here.
And he should be able to make this whiff.
So Andy is going to do just that. Brainstorm is on the stack here. He'll draw his 3 cards. 1, 2, 3. I see a Daze. I see a Force.
Days, yeah, and a Flusterstorm, it looks like.
Okay, Flusterstorm is an interesting card in this matchup. It's pretty good because if Reid decided to go something like a Dark Ritual, he could just stop that, or Hematotoric, he could stop that as well.
Yeah, it seems like it counters most of Reid's things.
Yeah, sure. So it looks like he's probably going to put the 2 spells back on top, and he's going to keep like Wasteland Force Will just to have that
he
whiff.
wants to brick the Inquisition.
Yeah. And he's going to show him a hand of Force Will Wasteland. And Andy's not going to sack that Polluted Delta because he actually wants to draw a blue card. Although he doesn't really need to draw a blue card just because he has access to 5 lands.
Is there a spell he needs to counter even?
Well,
you're saying he just doesn't even want to pitch to the Force. He just wants to hard cast
it? Yeah, hard cast it. Why not? I think Andy right there should have played that Wasteland, and he could have actually hard casted this Force of Will on the Liliana. I think he probably realized it right now, and he's going to go back, and he's a big pottery guy.
He's down 1 Flusterstorm.
Yeah, so he's going to be working in the studio, and he's going to say, you know what? Yeah, I probably should have had that Flusterstorm in hand.
Well, sometimes you forget, especially when you're playing a deck like Rug Delver that's so mana-light, you forget that you can actually cast Force of Will.
Exactly, yeah.
It's very...
But you could.
Yeah, you can. It's just not very common.
Yeah, 5 mana for a counterspell is not really what you want to do, but sometimes it's fine. I think people got got a little warped with Counterspell, and then they made Dissolve and Cancel. They made so many versions of Counterspells that cost 2 or 3 mana. All right, so there's a Sinkhole. This is just, absolutely fine. Reid sinkholing anything from Andy right now is just kind of laughable for Andy, just because he has Life in the Loam and he has plenty of lands to play already.
Right. It almost seems that this whole game has been about that Life from the Loam.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because if he didn't have Life in the Loam, Andy just would not have been in this game at all.
Right, and that True Name Nemesis still going to work. Reid has yet to find an answer to it and has brought him down to 7 life.
Yeah, only about 3 more turns. Uh-oh. Oh, and there's the daze.
Going to get dazed here.
All right. That was a really big play for Andy there.
Yeah, Reid is now left without a hand.
But we see a Flusterstorm, so that would, might have some protection here depending on what card Reid draws.
Andy's choosing not to make land drops here again.
Yeah.
And that's to shield against him to Turok.
It could be Heptatorix because he has 1 good spell in his hand. So he's going to ponder here. Reid's on 4 life. Remember, Andy still has that Life from the Loam in his graveyard, so he can always get back the Volcanic Islands. He can get back, maybe a Wasteland or 2. So looks like he's going to play Nimble Mongoose.
All right, another creature there. Nimble Mongoose, easily a 3/3 at this point.
So I think Reid just has 1 out here, his second Knights of Soul's Betrayal.
Yeah.
Instead of Inquisition, just to see what's up. And then Reid's going to concede. All right, wow. So far we actually had, 2 really nice games. We saw how Pox worked. We saw how Rug Delver was able to combat it. I'm having a, enjoyable time watching these guys play.
Yeah, it still seems like a pretty decent matchup for Pox. Reid needs to have an answer to that Life from the Loam, but I think once he's able to get rid of it, it still seems like it's a good matchup for him.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, Reid does have Nihilist Spellbomb, and he might also bring in Surgical Extraction to kind of combat that Life in the Loam and kind of shut him off green by taking his Tropical Island. Go Sinkhole, Surgical, Wasteland, Surgical on your Tropical Island. You can't play any more green spells. The Rug Delver deck, ideally they would play a Taiga, but they don't want to play a Taiga because Taiga doesn't do anything with Daze, doesn't do anything with Brainstorm, can't cast a Delver.
Now, Andrew can protect his Life from the Loam from Surgical with Brainstorm, correct? If he has the, he can stop his Loam from getting Surgical.
Sure.
But he can't stop the lands themselves from getting Surgical.
Exactly. Can't stop it. I mean, I heard some people play like a Breeding Pool in their Rug Delver deck. This was like a couple of years ago. They're like, I'll just play a Breeding Pool to actually get around this interaction, because Breeding Pool is an island. It is a forest. Essentially, it's a tropical island.
It's a bad tropical island.
It's a bad tropical island. But hey, Legacy is also expensive. If you can't afford those $150 tropical islands, play a Breeding Pool. It's not the end of the world.
Right.
But Reid will be on the play of this game, so Reid is definitely going to be looking for something really powerful. On the other hand, Andy's going to be looking for something like a hand with Daze, a hand with Force of Will, a hand with Spell Pierce, or just a hand with a bunch of lands and like a Ponder, so he can try to sculpt to draw his important cards.
Now, because Reid's on the play, does that make him more likely to side in things like Nether Void this game?
Well, I think he's going to have Nether Void in anyway.
Okay.
But maybe slightly more likely, because if he's on the draw, he might be worried, okay, well, I can't cast Nether Void if Andy has a threat already in play. Nether Void is a card where if it's like an even board state, or if Reid is just slightly ahead with anything, it could really shut out the game, and Reid could just win on the spot right there with Nether Void. Nether Void is an excellent card against any combo deck as well.
Sure, once you stick it, it's very hard to combo
Exactly. Out. I mean, like, how good is Dahlia versus these combo decks? Very good.
Yeah.
Imagine having 3 Thalias, Like, the legend rule does not apply. You have 3 Thalias in play. So you can see Reid is kind of zoned out here. I think Reid definitely wants to win this match, but if he loses, he wouldn't be upset at all, just because him and Andy are such great friends. And I think Andy's the same way here. Andy actually has some success on the Star City circuit. He finished second not too long ago in his Standard Open.
All right.
So, yeah.
So stretching across both formats.
Exactly.
There.
And again, Andy is very new to Legacy. Only been playing Legacy for a couple of months, but he has been practicing with Reid Duke. So
yeah, Rug Delver, it's also a pretty good weapon to start in Legacy with.
Yeah.
So we're going to see Reid start the game on Inquisition of Kozilek. We'll get a look at what Andy has kept. Both players are on 7 cards.
Yeah, this is definitely a matchup you guys should go back and watch again, just because Rug Delver is the most popular deck in Legacy, I would say, and Pox is just a really cool deck.
Yeah, so he's going to get his choice of cards here. We have the Volcanic Island, a Tropical Island, a Fetch Land. So Andy's kept 3 lands. Besides that, he has Ponder, Spell Pierce, True Name Nemesis, and Delver of Secrets.
Yeah, it depends on what's in Reid's hand, and then Reid will decide what he wants to take. He could take any one of these 4 cards. He could take Delver. He could easily take Ponder. He could take Spell Pierce. He could even take True Name Nemesis. I think True Name Nemesis is the card like least likely for Reid to take.
Yeah, I would say my guess is that he wants to disrupt the synergy of Ponder Delver.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. So I think it's going to be Delver. And
All right, and it
Reid
is.
does take the Delver, and he'll just pass the turn. All right, so either Reid's going to write down his hand, or Andy might just play with his hand face up here.
All right.
So Andy will draw for the turn. There's a volcanic island.
So a little land heavy for him. He does still have that Ponder and Spell Pierce.
It's definitely fine. Like he wants to be. He would rather have 5 lands than 2.
Yeah, especially in this matchup.
Yeah, in this matchup for sure. So there's a Ponder. I see a couple more lands, and I see 1 spell. It might be a Force of Will down at the bottom. So it's kind of amazing how if we can see like the side of the card, we're like, I would think
it's pretty red. It looks like 2 lands. One's a fetch land, one's a regular jewel, and a Force of Will. I would say not a particularly enticing top 3.
Exactly. But I mean, Andy still has that Spell Pierce, so next turn he could like maybe sit on the Spell Pierce, disallowing Reid to play Liliana because Reid knows that he does have a Spell Pierce, so he can't just walk his Liliana into it.
Maybe. Well, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll find out.
I think he might be a double spell hand.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Okay.
I think there might be something else.
So he's gonna shuffle it away.
Shuffle it though. We'll never know.
Yeah. So a card that could be like insane against Pox is something like, any Planeswalker is very good against Pox. For example, I know some Rug Delver decks board into a Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Sure.
So
and once it's resolved, Pox has very few ways to deal with
exactly.
Planeswalker.
Yeah. Very difficult for Reid to beat something like a Jace. But Andy does not have a Jace in the sideboard. Some people like it in the Rug Delver sideboard. Some people don't.
Well, you'd have to play Hero's Downfall, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you could. I mean,
yeah.
maybe this is a new metagame of Legacy. So Andy will just pass the turn. He drew a Flood of Strands off that Ponder. And Reid drew a spell this turn. Knowing Reid, he probably has at least 1 or 2 more lands. I do see a Wasteland.
He has a Wasteland and a Nile Spellbomb here. So he does have an answer to that.
Possible Life and Loam.
Possible Life and Loam.
Sure. Reid does know that Andy does have a lot of lands in his hand, so it's probably unlikely he's going to go on the Wasteland plan. And again, Rug Delver could really do everything it wants off 2 mana anyway.
Yeah, I mean, how important are Pox's lands, right?
Yeah, well, that is also true.
So we're going to see Inquisition. Reid does get to learn that Andy drew another land this turn.
So at this point, Reid is...
Oh, man.
What's up?
Andy drew another land off the Ponder in addition.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he drew Flood of Strands. Yeah, that's what he drew. I think Reid's probably going to take True Name Nemesis. But again, if he has something like Liliana in his hand that he wants to resolve, or maybe like a Nether Void, he might actually take the Spell Pierce.
Yeah, my guess is I actually wouldn't be surprised to see him take the Spell Pierce here, just because he has so many cards that can deal with True Name Nemesis.
Yeah, he does. And Knight of Souls Betrayal being the best one.
Right.
Yeah. So we'll see what Reid decides to take here. He is going to take that Spell Pierce. So that's definitely a good call. And probably a Curse Scroll here. Oh, a Spell Bomb.
Yeah,
okay.
He's just going to get the Spell Bomb down. There's very few ways I think that Andy can answer the bomb once it's in play.
Yeah, exactly. Again, it's just Ancient Grudge, for example, and if Reid's tapped out, he's unable to draw that extra card.
Yeah, big Brainstorm drawn by Andy there. That's going to be very good at helping him get
and
cards back in his hand.
And there's a chance that Andy doesn't even want to cast his Brainstorm here. Yeah, he just wants to pass the turn and set it up for next turn.
Sure, so if they just both make land drops and pass back and forth, that's not necessarily bad for Andy.
No, it just always depends on what player draws what cards. I think Reid might be searching for a Swamp here.
Yeah, Reid's going to cycle the Nile Spellbomb.
Yeah,
so.
And I think he actually hit that Swamp too.
All right.
He takes a look at his graveyard, and he'll probably just pass here. I don't think Andy wants to Brainstorm here.
He's going to Brainstorm on end step.
All right.
I mean, if he's committed to cracking his fetch land, I think
that's fine. I think Andy could actually just wait another turn or two because of Reid's not really doing anything here.
Right.
So Andy could kind of figure out what he actually needs and maybe get a couple more dead cards in his hand to shuffle away.
Yeah, he does get to look 1 card deeper if he waits.
Yeah, exactly. It is 1 card deeper because he's drawing a card from his draw step, so then he gets to see card 2, 3, and 4 rather than just seeing 1, 2, and 3 and then seeing card 2 and 3 again.
Yep. It looks like he's going to replace... He drew a Flusterstorm, it looks like, and then 1 other blue card.
Yeah.
So he did get to replace two of his lands with spells off that Brainstorm.
Sure, and that's another consideration too, because Flusterstorm sometimes can't counter everything he wants to counter, especially from Pox if Reid builds up enough mana. But if you're able to go Brainstorm first, you could add that Storm count. All right.
We see a Pond... Looks like a...
No, this is still the End of Storm. Brainstorm.
No, this is a Ponder and Flusterstorm that he drew off that Brainstorm.
Yeah, exactly.
So now he's gonna now he goes to his turn.
Yeah, yep. Okay, so Andy draws a Daze. Daze is not the worst here. If Andy picked up on the fact that Reid needed to cycle that Spell Bomb for a land, he might actually think, hey, this daze is going to come in handy, right?
Absolutely. True Name Nemesis back in play. He has the sheet of paper with Reid written on it.
Yep. All right. We have to get some name tags for the True Name Nemesis.
Just in case we weren't sure which player he was going to give protection from.
Okay, so it looked like Reid drew another spell. So if I had to, put my money where my mouth is, I would say that Reid does not have a fourth land.
Yeah, he does have that Knight of Souls Betrayal in hand, as we know that there's a days waiting in the wings for that one.
Yeah, exactly. Reid is still, unaware of most of Andy's hand because after the double Inquisition that Reid played, Andy did a brainstorm and, did a lot of shuffling.
Yeah, Brainstorm is doing a lot of work this game. Reid does have the answer for the True Name Nemesis. That's going to be Innocent Blood. He had to pick, it looks like, between Sinkholing and Innocent Blooding there.
Sure.
Because of the Wasteland not making black.
Yeah, I think at this point, Reid doesn't really care too much about Andy's lands because he does know that early in the game, Andy had plenty of lands and he probably still has extra lands in his hand.
I mean, it's funny. Is it possible you might even see Andy go on the Wasteland plan?
Probably not, just because Reid has so many basic swamps in his deck. What is Andy really going to Wasteland? Just his own Wasteland? Maybe his Mistress Factory?
Yeah, I suppose as long as the Wasteland's untapped, that's really a suspect line.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Sure, if Reid, taps that Wasteland for something, and then Andy's like, all right, well, I'll just waste it now not to get, protect my Tropical Island or protect my Volcanic Island. That could happen, but otherwise, Reid is the one that's really going to be attacking the lands most of the time. In this case, probably neither player are going to care about killing each other's lands.
Yeah, and we see a Fonder from Andy. No land drop, passes back the turn. He has a Daze, a Flusterstorm, a Brainstorm, and 2 more lands.
Yeah, no, Andy is really holding on to his lands because of Brainstorm, because of Hem to Torok, and also maybe to kind of draw out some Sinkhole type cards or Wasteland. But again, Andy could just hard cast the Force of Will and not 2-for-1 himself.
Yeah, he's going to Daze this Sinkhole.
This is pretty good because he gets to return that Tropical Island to his hand, so the Sinkhole, quote-unquote, fizzles.
So Reid didn't pay for the Daze, and that's because he doesn't want his Wasteland getting wasted?
No, well, the whole thing is that he returned the Daze. He returned the
island.
He
returned the island.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
Daze, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
right,
so
right.
It just kind of fizzles the Sinkhole anyway. So there's another Brainstorm. Andy's drawing pretty well, wouldn't you say, Matthias?
Yeah, especially when you have these land-heavy hands. It really lets Brainstorm be a powerful card.
Yeah. Now, in Legacy, you're a big fan of Brainstorm?
I would say it's the best card in Legacy right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of the players out there do value Brainstorm very highly. And, I mean, look at Vintage. It's restricted inventions.
Right.
Yeah, so that's how powerful Brainstorm is. And it really rewards, a lot of tough decisions. What card do I want to keep? When do I want to cast it?
So we do see that Wasteland from Andy.
All right, so there's a Wasteland on the Volcanic Island. So I believe what
Andy
happened...
wasted the waste, and then
yeah.
Reid... So Reid did get the 2-for-1 on lands there.
Yeah, I guess the whole thing is that Andy is worried about a Knight of Souls Betrayal. He might be worried about a Liliana of the Veil.
Well, yeah, now that he's spent his days...
Yes.
He doesn't have an answer to it. Reid's going to Sinkhole away Andy's last land. I'm a little uncomfortable with how Andy has left his mana situation.
I mean, this is fine because now he's able to play a Nimble Mongoose, and it is with Threshold, so it is a 3/3. So right now it's a decent clock if Reid doesn't have anything. Right now, the best card for Reid would be a Smallpox, but we know that Andy still has that Force of Will in his hand.
Right.
So let's see what Reid has here. I think he does have a Smallpox. I wonder if Reid's going to try to go for it. Oh, he's going for a Hem to Torok first.
So Andy has Force of Will, Flusterstorm, land, and Vendilion Clique.
Now, this is kind of interesting because Andy might want to keep his Force Will for something else, so he might kind of play the odds. It's pretty risky here either way, right?
Yeah, he can either get rid of the worst 2 cards, which is probably going to be, Force of Will Daze?
Well, he might want to hold a Force of Will.
Right.
That's the whole thing.
Yeah, so if he wants to, and he does, so he's going to go ahead and let them be chosen randomly instead of him choosing them himself.
Yeah, so if Andy had a card more valuable than Force of Will in his hand, then he would just Force of Will because he doesn't care about the life. So there's 4, so that's the first one. That's going to be the Flutterstrand.
All right, so he's halfway there.
And it's a 2.
So that's second card gotten
a Vendilion Clique. So he's going to keep the Force of Will.
He keeps both his counter match.
Yeah, that's really, really good for Andy. Andy, if someone's running good today, it's you, or at least this match, Oh, there's a Volcanic Island.
And Goose goes on the attack number. It is certainly a 3/3 here. A Volcanic Island for Andy, and he's going to pass back.
All right, let's see. Reid's going to draw for his turn. It's a Wasteland.
That's a pretty
good,
draw for Reid. Now, does Reid... He has a bit of a dilemma. He wants to Wasteland, But at the same time, he wants to build up to that Knight of Souls Betrayal, too.
He does want to build to the Knight of Souls Betrayal, but remember, now that Andy has Threshold, and if Reid doesn't get a Nihilist Spellbomb, the Goose is still going to be a 2/2, and any Goyf drawn is going to be very big. So I think Reid wants to wasteland that Tropical Island to try to cut Andy off from like a top deck Goyf or something.
There also is a concern of how many of each duel is in Andy's graveyard. If Reid can permanently cut Andy off a color, that's very relevant.
Exactly. So it looked like Reid started to tap some mana, but now he might reconsider. So he might start off with the Smallpox.
All right.
And what Andy wants to do here, he wants to Flusterstorm the Smallpox, and it would be the copy of 2. Okay?
Right, so then Reid won't be able to pay.
Exactly.
If Andy didn't have the counterspell here, Reid would get all his permanents.
Well, most of them, yeah. Because then he can finish off with a Wasteland.
Right.
If
But
he
the Flusterstorm
chooses
does
so.
hit Smallpox.
Oh, that is a top-decked Goyf.
That's
I'm really surprised
draw.
Reid didn't want to wasteland that Tropical Island. I guess he had other plans. Maybe he had a Liliana in his hand. Because if you notice, he started to tap some mana. Maybe it's a Nether Spirit.
Yeah, there's something else in his hand that he
That
wants
costs
to protect.
3 mana.
He does have a second Wasteland drawn now, so if he can clear this board, he can get all of Andy's permanents.
Okay, so is it a Liliana? Let's see. It's a Nether Spirit. Okay, Nether Spirit's pretty good right now. All right? He's going to be able to keep chump blocking that Tarmogoyf for as long as he wants.
Yeah, more importantly is that if he gets Knight of Souls Betrayal in play, no, I'll give Nether Spirit
Yeah, Nether Spirit would be 1/1, yeah.
So Nether Spirit starts on the chump blocks.
Ooh, so Andy decided to play the Delver. I'm not in love with that play. I would rather hold that Delver for Force of Will.
Yeah, at this
Dealing
point,
3 points.
I agree.
Yeah, you know. So I think Andy had enough board presence where him having Counterspell would be more valuable. But we'll see if this pays dividends for Andy or not.
Dark Ritual from Reid Duke, and it looks like it's going to be that Knight of Souls Betrayal.
Let's see. He's going to Wasteland the Volcanic Island.
Right. Andy has no
Knight
mana.
of Souls
Knight of
Betrayal. So
kills
Delver. Yeah. So things would be a little different, but right now it's really a close game.
Yeah, Reid's
it
at
really
11.
is.
He's going to take 2 damage a turn from that Nimble
Yeah.
Mongoose.
Did Andy draw a blue card? Do you know?
I don't know.
It's really important. If he drew a blue card, Andy's going to be in much better shape than if he did it.
Right, he'll then have Reid's next
Yeah.
spell if he wants it.
Reid drew something. What is it? What is it? Come on,
It's
Reid. Show us what it is.
Double black.
Black.
Hopefully not Sinkhole. Nope, it's
Oh,
Smallpox.
Smallpox. Wow. Oh, he drew the blue card.
He drew the
That's
Stifle.
that was so. That
and
was
you were
so
saying
key.
he should board out Stifle. I mean,
Oh
it's-
yeah. All right. So now Reid's going to 7.
All right.
All right. Andy's gonna have to dodge a lot of outs now. Even something like just anything would be good here.
Anything
Liliana.
that kills a creature.
Yeah. Innocent Blood.
Now, if he Innocent Bloods, Reid's going to have to take a Goyf hit, right? And that's starting to get pretty big.
Okay, so Reid's on 5. He really needs Liliana here.
Yeah, I mean, even, to be honest, like Nile Spellbomb is probably
there's
Reid's best draw.
Curse Scroll. The Goyf is way too big, and he can't target that 2/2 Nimble Mongoose. There's our Urborg. All right, so Reid's going out to 3. And he draws for his turn, a Flooded Strand.
So now he has 1 land to work with again. Since we haven't really been keeping track of Andy's draws, he does have another Tarmogoyf and a
Graph
Digger's
Digger's Cage.
Now, Cage is very strong here. That stops
Okay.
Nether Spirit from coming back.
Let's see if Andy's going to go for it. It looks like he is going to go for it. So now, what can Reid really draw here? He's going to have to go runner.
Does he even have enough runners to do that?
Yeah, I mean, he could go Innocent Blood.
All right, yeah, he's going to have to go double kill spell.
Yeah, Smallpox is out of the equation because Smallpox would make Reid go down to 2 life, and then
Right.
he would just die. Well, no, actually, you're right. I think that's it.
I don't think, because all of his removal is sacrifice-based, I think the Goyf is going to kill him next
Yeah,
turn.
I mean, even if you went like runner, like Nylon Spellbomb into Innocent Blood, Goyf would still be too big because of Reid's own graveyard.
Right.
I think this might be it. Wow. If Andy pulls this one off, he'll definitely be, the king of Sugarloaf. He's trying to take Reid Duke's crown. Right now, Reid is actually the king of Sugarloaf. Let's see. This is for everything. Reid takes 1 look at his life total.
It's a factory.
It is a factory.
He's going to Curse Scroll something
Factory
before he
will
plays it.
allow him to live another turn. Andy's going to go to 15.
And he plays Factory, passes.
Passes the turn. Andy, slow draw here. A Nimble Mongoose. That's pretty
Great draw.
good. There's a chump block on the Goyf. I believe Andy's going to play this Noah Mongoose, leaving Reid with maybe no outs. Reid draws last card.
Yeah, and that's not going to do it. It's
It is.
innocent
Oh, we have a
blood.
new
It's
king of Sugarloaf. Sugarloaf, New York. Congratulations, Andrew Boswell, is your new king of Sugarloaf for the time being. I cannot believe it.
All
Rug
right.
Delver versus Pox. That was a nice match.
It's a very good match there. We saw Andy taking down both board games really on the back